One night to speed up truth. We had a promise made for accent and away. Both under influence. We had divine sense.
where they normally work is sitting down with their boss or manager and saying, hang on, let's look at sustainability through this lens. It's bright, it's colorful, there's 17 different areas, and all of a sudden, A, the concept of what it means to be sustainable just gets blown out of the park, and also B, especially small businesses are like, hang on, I can fit in there. So you can imagine the one that always comes up is 12, production and consumption. You're like, okay, so you don't have to solve global warming. We don't have to solve greenhouse gas emission, but let's look at our waste products. Or let's look at where are we purchasing our stuff, where's it coming from? Often people, companies, a lot of the companies that my students have been in have come around and said, you know what, let's focus on SDG 3 and 8. Let's look at our employees and start there. And bringing in that social aspect of sustainability. So the SDGs, we've found this framework to be really like an encouraging framework that enables small businesses or people or organizations who were hesitant to get involved to start becoming involved because one, they suddenly realize sustainability is so much more than climate action, and two, they find something or they find a place where they can be. And the SDGs, you know what it's like, if you put the little square on your promo or on your marketing, suddenly you've legitimized what you're doing. But it can be a motivation in the right direction. The other thing that we've seen, especially in New Zealand, that we see that's I think really encouraging is the number of online tools that are available through organizations like the Sustainable Business Network. That's the main one that's up here, but there's also through Council and through the Sustainable Business Council, there's a lot of tools that are online that organizations can get hold of to start, okay, this is what we can start doing. But what some of our businesses or that we've interviewed or people have worked at have come back and said, but it's too much. Like I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. It's too much information. Which leads us to the last thing I want to, not that. The last thing I want to talk about is, which I think is super exciting at the moment, is the rise of the sustainability manager, which we're starting to see in big companies, but even in small companies. And I think this is fantastic. So it's a position within the business. So basically the last 3 days, I've actually been traveling around Auckland and talking to a few of my previous and current students who are now in the position and talking to them about what is it that you actually do. And basically they're working in small, micro, medium type enterprises, and they're a position within the business where they focus on the sustainability of that business from the entire supply chain. So the one guy, for example, works for NZ Panels that makes these things, So I was in his factory just the other day. And so from where they source the wood to make the filling stuff, to where they source the paper that goes on top, the packaging, where it goes, even the lights in the factory, his whole job is literally looking at their business and wherever he can, trying to find alternatives. Sometimes cheaper than getting in a sustainability consultant because they're quite expensive. And his story is actually classic because he went to his boss 2 years ago and said, he was in sales, and he said, I don't want to be in sales anymore. I'm actually passionate about the environment. I think I'm going to leave and I'm going to start doing sales for like a solar power, company or something. And his boss said, no, if you can make up your salary, I'll give you the job. I'll make you a sustainability manager. Within a month, he went back to his boss and said, okay, if you do the X, Y, and Z, you've got an extra 100K a year, that's my salary. And I was talking to him, I saw him on Monday, and he just sent an email to his boss about over the last quarter how bringing in sustainability strategy, he'd saved his company $900,000. So that's cool. So that's what sustainability managers are doing and where a lot of my students are going. I also spoke with another student of mine and and from her perspective, what it's about is getting helping the business to work out how to become more compliant, because often if you're compliant, you can get funding. Doing education within the businesses and outside of the businesses. How much time do I even have? Oh, 3 minutes. That's amazing. Education both internally and externally. And so I just think it's something that's really exciting that's happening in the world of business around us. I really want to look into it more. I know it's happening in your bigger organizations. I think one of the challenges with the sustainability manager in the bigger organizations is that it often just goes to, it becomes a tag-on role to somebody who's been involved in management or marketing, and they don't actually understand sustainability, and then it can become a greenwashing thing, which is a problem. But what I'm seeing from where I'm at, on a grassroots level with smaller businesses, I'm starting to see genuine sustainability manager roles coming into being, where people who've got a good understanding of sustainability are being put in the positions where they're taking a small or micro, medium type enterprise and really starting to say, let's look at our business as a whole and work out what are the small little changes we can do to start to becoming more sustainable. So that's what I'm excited about at the moment, in terms of small businesses and implementing the SDGs and trying to become more, to just small ways that we can start becoming better at what we do. And then just the last thing to share about just quickly is, as I went around chatting to my students this week, I saw they'd show me around their factories, and the whole time I'm thinking, flip, I didn't teach them any of this. They're talking to me about, I don't even know what they're talking about, and these different, what compliance things, and how you make this laminate or whatever. And then my other students she's telling me all about the different recycling materials, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I am a lecturer. I don't even know, I don't think I taught them anything about this. So then at the end, I had the courage and I said, okay, you've got your marks, so I no longer have power over you. So tell me now, was the degree helpful, or what about what we teach is helpful? And they all came back with the same thing, which I think is quite interesting, is they said, you taught us to see sustainability as at the social side of it. And so for them in their positions now, as much as they're also, so like they were saying, as much as we're looking through the supply chain or looking at our business as a whole and trying to work out how to become more sustainable, at the same time, we evaluate each potential solution and we think, okay, but what might the social impact be of the solution before they put it in place? And that was also just mind-blowing for me and just encouraging. I think in the world of development and in the world of sustainability, we can get to a place where it's very depressive and negative. But for me, there are these small things that are happening that are good. And I think that this rise of the sustainability manager, with the right people coming into the roles with the right knowledge, is an exciting potential that we have ahead of us. So yeah, that's me. I'm going to hand over now to Elise, she's from Auckland Council. She's going to be talking about a project that they do. And like I said before, we're really just trying to keep this practically minded, on the ground, what's really happening in the real world. Oh, she's not.
No,
she's a student.
I'm your student. Kia ora everyone, my name is Elise, and I do work for Auckland Council, but I am a master's student with Sam. I'm studying sustainable development, majoring in environmental sustainability, but I currently am working as the organic waste specialist and project manager for Auckland Council, rolling out a food scraps collection and processing service to Tamaki Makaurau in 2023. My background's in mechanical engineering. I studied at this university. I used to sit in this exact lecture hall, which is quite weird to be here. And I'm going to be researching next year, doing my dissertation, and how recovering resources, specifically focusing on food waste in New Zealand, can contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, and also a circular economy in New Zealand. So yeah, today I'm going to give an overview of the project that I'm working on, and hopefully maybe next year I'll have some conclusive research to actually show you guys, but Sam's kind of roped me into this, so I will try. Okay, so Auckland has a vision to be zero waste by 2040. We have a 4-tiered approach to food waste specifically. Initially, we want to prevent it. If we can't do that, we want to support redistribution of food initiatives through the community, and otherwise through to animals. Next, we encourage home and community composting, and then the 4th tier is what I'm delivering, which is the food scrap service for curbside food scraps. So the reason that we need this, if I'll go, So this is quite a depressing slide actually, but so, sorry, the food waste problem it's immense. The waste problem in general is immense. So as Kiwis, we send approximately 750 kilos of waste to landfill every year personally, so that's each of us in this room does that. And overall, over the world, 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted throughout the production, distribution and consumption stages. And if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd highest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions after the United States and China. So in Auckland, and that's our curbside bin percentages. About 45% of what we put into our bins every week is food scraps, and that equates to about 100,000 tonnes of food going to landfill annually. And unfortunately, the waste that we're sending to landfill and the associated greenhouse gas emissions are increasing annually. The reason that's what I've tried to draw this molecule diagram, the reason it's a problem to have food scraps going into landfill and not being managed properly is that when food scraps breaks down in the absence of oxygen, it produces methane. Methane has a global warming potential, which is 28 times carbon dioxide. So effectively, 1 tonne of methane is the equivalent of 28 tonnes of carbon dioxide. So it's a significant issue. Also, food waste can leach into our waterways and into our land. So yeah, we really don't want to be sending it to landfill. So this is what we are doing. I can't really point. So we have you have your food production and consumption stage, and then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be collecting it. So we're going to we're rolling out food scrap service to 520,000 households in Auckland next year. It's going to be the biggest waste service rollout in the Southern Hemisphere. And everyone's going to get a 23-litre bin to put your food scraps in. We're going to then consolidate it and take it to an anaerobic digestion processing plant. So I'll show you some photos so it might make a bit more sense. And then from the anaerobic digestion processing, you get biogas, which is going to be converted into renewable energy, and digestate, which is a liquid slurry, which is going to become a biofertilizer. And both of those products are then going to be used to grow more food, which is going to go back into the food production and consumption cycle. And that's how you get a circular solution. So yeah, this is what your bin's going to look like. It's going to be like, I think of it as like the child to the nuclear family. You're going to have the little green bin and like mum and dad, or like mum and mum, whatever. And so everyone's going to get that next year. It's going to be rolled out from April to November. Because it's such a big rollout, we've got to do it in stages. Also, the plant that's being built, you have to feed it in stages. It's like a baby. You've got to get it used to having like more of a diet. So, on the left here is the consolidation facility that's in Papakura, and then the processing facility is in Reparoa, which is about 15 minutes north of Taupua. So it gets consolidated. It's then taken down to the anaerobic digestion facility in trucks that currently travel to Auckland with construction aggregate and travel back to the Taupua region empty. So we're using existing kind of bulk haul truck movements. And this is the processing plant. This is pretty groundbreaking for New Zealand. Anaerobic digestion is proven, it's widespread throughout the world for processing different kinds of waste. Food waste is really highly suited to anaerobic digestion because it's high energy and high liquid content. One of the biggest questions we get asked is, why are we shipping it down to Reparoa? So you get a lot of really valuable output products from this process. What you can see in the back, like in the back here, that's greenhouses, that's growing tomatoes. So the biogas is going to go through, a combined heat process. It's going to be converted into renewable energy. So that'll be your electricity. And then some of it will be cleaned and separated, and the renewable carbon dioxide will go into the greenhouses to help grow the tomatoes. They currently use a boiler which uses natural gas to create that CO2. So the renewable energy that's going to come from this plant will be displacing the energy that comes from fossil fuels. And then the other really exciting part is the digestate, which is the liquid slurry that's going to come out, which has a really high nutrient value, and that's going to be applied to the land around Reparoa's facility as a sustainable fertiliser and an alternative to synthetic fertilisers. Am I talking really quickly? Sorry. This is anaerobic digestion. I can try and answer more on this later because whenever I talk about this at work, people say I don't know, it don't make sense. But effectively, it's a closed biological process in which bacteria breaks down organic material to produce biogas and digestate. That's to try and show you the different outputs. And biggest thing on this is that it's closed, so it's not putting any of those emissions into the atmosphere. Environmental benefits from this, we're reducing waste, as in we're diverting it from landfill, and we're treating food scraps as a resource, which is what they are. They're not a waste product, and we shouldn't be disposing of them. We're recycling the nutrients that are in our food scraps into a fertiliser. We're putting it back onto land, which is then contributing back into the agriculture cycle. We're generating renewable energy, and because we're displacing the use of fossil fuel energy and synthetic fertilisers or organic fertilisers, which are mined, we're as a sum reducing a lot of emissions and environmental impacts. Sam asked me to talk about some of the challenges. I guess the scale of the rollout, so 500,000 households to get bins to all those people, it's not straightforward. That processing plant is the first of its kind in New Zealand. It can take a lot to kind of explain the whole process and get people on board with it, but we really do need to have people on board because as much as building one of these plants for the first time is technically difficult, actually getting people to use the service is proving to be quite challenging, I guess. The multi-stakeholder partnerships, which is probably a big thing I'm going to focus on in my research next year. So we have public sector, so we've got central government, local government, private sector, which is Ecogas, which is the company building this facility. We have all of the collection contractors. We work with community groups. We have all of us in civil society. There is just so many people that have to be on board and have to be on the same page to get this across the line. So it's the first of its kind in New Zealand. There is no handbook. First large-scale anaerobic digestion food waste processing plant. It's the first large-scale biogas to pipeline plant. So we're going to be putting some of that biogas back into the gas grid as well. First time renewable energy will be used in greenhouses to grow food. First time digestate from anaerobic digestion of food waste in New Zealand will be used as a fertiliser. I've put here challenge with being behaviour change, so increasing and maintaining participation in the service and making sure that we're doing it properly and not contaminating it. These are some of the SDGs that I think it contributes to. But as kind of what Sam was saying, I went into this master's and this project focused on the environmental benefits and impacts, but the more work that I do and the more that I research the actual social benefits immediately, I guess being the jobs that it's providing in the regions, in Auckland, but actually for all of us in the world that we're living in the state of the climate at the moment, there are huge social benefits to using this service. Okay, 1 minute. So I feel like this is not new to probably anyone else in this room, but the Planetary Boundaries report done for New Zealand is a really amazing report if you haven't read it yet. And it talks about how we're projected to exceed our carbon budget for the 2-degree warming limit by 2038. We exceed 5 of our planetary boundaries at least. And our planetary boundaries are the thresholds within which humanity can survive, develop, and thrive now, but also for generations to come. So I do have a lot of critical hope, as Sam tells us we have to have, that we can actually all make a difference with our choices. And by delivering this project, I'm really hoping that we can, reduce our waste, reduce our exploitation of natural resources and our greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Do I need to stand here?
No, unfortunately, at the moment, we're not going to stop for questions because we had to start late. I just want to make sure every speaker has a chance to chat. After this, we have the tea break. So if you want to chat to speakers, I'm sure we can hang around and, you can get us food or something. But we're going to move on to the next presenter, who is John Edwards, also from Massey, to hear about his story of something creative and positive to look forward to. And then our final presenter will be from Samoa. Where have I got it from?
Thank you. First of all, I want to start by acknowledging Nicola, my co-worker and co-supervisor on this project. I think this is depends on how you count it, either third or fourth project we've worked on together. And Everday, final year student who worked on this project this year. So the project is using coconut husk for the treatment of Tongan septic tank effluent. Sustainable Development Report for 2022 said that in 2018 only 0.3% of anthropogenic water was treated, which is described as a major challenge. And in 2020, 93% of the population were using flush sanitation services, which is extremely encouraging. This is either poor flushed or system flushed, with system flushed rapidly taking over and being the main use. So I don't know what the other statistics are, but I think for the Pacific this is probably really high, which is very good. So the situation in Tonga is that most of the households have septic tanks, untreated effluent from which is a negative health and environmental impact. The effluent can also pollute surrounding sea and impact on marine life, SDG 14. A possible solution to this problem could be to install, this is another anaerobic, an anaerobic presentation, you'll hear that word a few times, downstream from the septic tank. Some work done in Brazil a couple of years ago showed that using coconut husk in an anaerobic filter can effectively polish or clean up effluent. And so it was Nicola's brainchild. She said that we already knew we were going to work in Tonga. There's another reason, but she said that she found that paper in Brazil, and then said that, and then we found that Tonga has an abundance of coconut husk. In 2017, there were 75 million, which approximately accounts for 7,200 coconuts per person. So there's certainly one or two coconut husks hanging around the place. And so we combined these two and thought, well, maybe, and septic tanks, we thought we're maybe onto a winner here. And so these are the coconut husks we imported from Tonga, green coconut husks and brown coconut husks, and I'm sure some of the people in here know a lot more about coconut husks than I ever will, but the green coconut husks are harvested first when you want to maximize the coconut water, and then the brown coconut are harvested later when you want to maximize the copra or the flesh, and eventually, of course, they fall off and hopefully not on somebody's head. So this is the setup in the laboratory. So we've got in the tank here, we've got simulated wastewater, and then we've got two. This is where we sample the feed, and we've got two peristaltic pumps and pump controllers where we can control the flow rate. I'll talk about that later. And then we've got two anaerobic filters, one of them containing brown coconut husk and the other one containing green coconut husk. And so this is where we're sampling the treated water. And then the treated water goes into there and overflows into there. As everybody will agree that there was an awful lot of treated water, an awful lot of feed going into this into the system. So this is basically what, this is not basically what they look like on the inside. So it's an upflow anaerobic filter with the feed coming in at the bottom, passing over the coconut husk and then going out at the top with these perforated plates to stop the coconut husks. My wife reminded me to say husks, which is not easy for me. So my apologies for people who are very familiar with these terms, but being a development conference, I thought maybe you need to explain. Chemical oxygen demand is, or COD, is the measure of the capacity of water to consume oxygen by decomposition of organic matter. COD analysis in that way is using an indirect measure of pollution. So the more, basic rule of thumb says the higher the COD, the more the pollution. So what basically is happening is that the COD is, the oxygen in the water is being consumed, and the carbon from the pollutants and then, or the organic matter, and then converted into CO2. So the aim of wastewater treatment therefore is to reduce the level of COD in water. So these are some results. This was from 2021. We've measured this because of, first of all, the nightmare of importing coconut husk under MPI regulations, and then COVID stepping in. You know, it reduced the amount of time we were able to actually collect data over, but we did manage to do over 64 days. So these are the results, and the average COD, this is a COD reduction as a percentage. For brown husk was 49, and for green husk was 21. So the obvious conclusion from that is that brown husks are superior. There is a fundamental reason to do with that, to do with leaching, but I left that bit out because the presentation was too long. So in 2022, Everdy Bukasa did a project entitled Application of Coconut Husk Anaerobic Filter as a filler material. So another term that's used, HRT, is the hydraulic retention time, is the amount of time a molecule of effluent spends in the reactor. I'll go back to the middle. I think you can hear me anyway. I talk very loud and very rude sometimes. But so HRT then is the volume of reactor divided by the flow rate. I'm sorry if this sounds like a maths lesson. So these are some results from Everdy's work. Using the HRT, setting the HRT at 8, 12, and 16.8, which was the figure we used in last year. So we'd need an awful lot more data in order to come to a firm conclusion. But what this fundamentally says is that, which is actually very good news for the project, which I'll come to further down, that HRT has very little effect on COD removal. But we need an awful lot more data, and it takes it's quite a big process to get the data. No, not that button, that one. So the other part of the work for this year was to try and come up with a suitable size for the reactor. So if hydraulic retention time is the volume of reactor divided by the flow rate, therefore the volume of reactor is the HRT multiplied by the flow rate. Now obviously the flow rate is going to be determined by the number of people in the house. And this, some data we got from 2016 says that in a Tongan household, there's between 4.5 and 5.6 people, depending on the region in Tonga. So from that data, and assuming an HRT of 8 hours, it estimated a size of reactor for a Tongan household was found to be about 150 litres. Am I okay? Yep. Free? Oh, wow. So these are questions yet to be answered. So what's the life expectancy of the coconut husk? So at some point or other, I was discussing this a couple of days ago with Nicola, at some point or other, the coconut husk will become ineffective. Something to do with the biofilm attaching to it. We know it's more than 60 days, but we don't know how much. We have got a plan for next year to start collecting data over very early on in the year, and then and to see, because at some point or other, when do we need to replace the coconut husk in the reactor? And what are the gases produced in the reactor? The basic rule of thumb for anaerobic filter, you might be wrong here, but is generally 60% methane and 40% CO2. I was told that you get 10 brownie points for every SDG I mentioned, so I thought I'd slip that one in. And what, if any, are the nutrient release? So what we do, if we're releasing nitrate and phosphate, then that causes a problem with the eutrophication. And what is the estimated cost of a unit? And obviously, is it economically viable? I mean, we could design something that's going to cost $50,000 per house, and it's going to be all one, but it's not going to happen. So that's something that I'm going to work on actually over the summer break. And what will drive the process? So my first thought on that was solar. Yes, because obviously that's and I'm dead on. What is culturally acceptable? Is it talking about sanitation culturally acceptable? And we've got contact in Tonga and in the government and another personal contact, and we're working on that, because if people are not going to talk about it or don't want to talk about it, then again, it's not going to happen. And is there a system applicable in other countries? My rule of thumb there, or my thoughts there, well, wherever there's coconut, septic tank and solar, maybe yes. That's another 10 brownie points. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As I say to my students all the time, especially in this field of sustainable development, if you only focus on the bad, you are going to go mad. So I really love these opportunities to just hear about innovative solutions that are moving us forward in the right direction. So thank you so much. Our final speaker is Susan from Samoa, who's coming in live via Zoom. Fingers crossed. Yay, there you are. Thank you so much for joining us.
That is not the policy I heard in front of you when you came to apply for that job.
And now it's the reality. Now you've got to reach it for the after the war. You've got a reality after the war.
Well, it's simple enough.
Suk sawa fa mama sa iframe mele mele.
It's very simple.
This year was bad.
For uma para ai bora. Lewa uma fa ka ula.
So when you're lucky, you can speak a different language.
Yes,
Oh, hello, Susan. Thank you for joining us. It's good to have you here.
I can see myself. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Okay, there we are.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
So you're going to
Can I
give your
start now?
presentation, and then if we have time afterwards, we'll see if there's time for questions. Thanks so much for
Well,
joining
thank you,
us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay,
Off you go.
Talofa from Apia. First, I'd like to thank the organizers of DevNet 2022 for this lovely opportunity to share our work with colleagues, friends, and partners in the region. So given time constraints, I'll be sharing some of the findings from the study of the impact of climate change on smallholder farmers from selected rural places in Samoa. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
So we can see it. But
So,
do you want to click
okay.
on slide share? Go to the top, the orange line at the very top. Click on that little like squarey thing with the arrow in it. Otherwise, keep it like that if you want to. It's also fine. So go up with your
thanks.
arrow. Go up with your arrow all the way to the top. Keep going up with the arrow. Keep going up. Up. No, all the way up to the bright orange line at the very top where it says autosave. Okay, then go. Okay, not there. Go across. Oh, okay. Go back to where you were. There we go. Yeah, nice. Yes, we can see that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. So, why study smallholders? Well, obviously, smallholder farming families make up 97% of Samoa's agriculture sector, which is mainly semi-subsistence production for household food and cash needs. Additionally, they are low technology farming activities heavily dependent on family labor. And more importantly, smallholder farming collectively has minimal impact on the environment as opposed to commercial farming. Yet, smallholders in Samoa and everywhere else in SIDS are among the first to be impacted by climate change, with implications on achieving SDG 2, the call to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So, in that respect, smallholders, particularly in Pacific Island states, need to be supported and empowered if we are to achieve SDG 2. And we also wanted to amplify the voices of smallholder farmers in the climate change dialogue at the national level. And conferences such as this one is another forum to talk about smallholders. The definitions of smallholder family farming vary widely depending on country, context, and the author. More importantly, smallholder agriculture is applied more generally to describe rural producers in developing countries who rely mainly on family labor to work the land. So several variables such as the size, labor composition, patrimony and ownership, and subsistence orientation are considered in the definitions of smallholder. And in this study, smallholder farming are family or household operated semi-subsistence production on 2 or less acres, 2 acres or less of land in rural Samoa. Family and household are terms that we use interchangeably based on the respondent's usage and reference to family, as in parents, grandparents, adult children and their spouses, children and grandchildren, whereas the household refers to family members that share a meal, eat together, and they share a umukuka or cookhouse, but live in separate houses on the same land. So this study was based on 25 smallholder farming households, 17 from Fastotai village, 2 from Falefa, and 6 from Falealili. So there, the study respondents were recruited from the 3 villages or places as shown on the map. Fastotai on the northwest coast of Upolu, Falefa, the eastern part of Upolu, and of course from the Falealili district, the southern part of Upolu Island. So, smallholders in this sample study rely on the cultivation of multiple crops, mainly taro or dalo, yams, bananas, cocoa, cassava, vegetables, breadfruit, coconuts, some cattle raised. These are sample households. Some raise cattle, pigs, and chicken. The estimated farm size under cultivation ranges from 0.25 acres to 10 acres. The size of the farm under cultivation depends on household labor available, as is the case with 23 of the households surveyed. 2 households in this study employ farm hands to help with planting, weeding, pruning, and raising livestock, among other things. And the farm hands are paid a wage of 60 to 150 Samoan tala per week. The family lands left uncultivated, this is estimated around 70%, overgrown with weeds, invasive species, presenting major problems for smallholders in terms of controlling weed and invasive species from encroaching onto croplands. This is just a sample from the 25 households to show the age of the head of the household. Mostly over 50, and they're quite old in that respect. So I think what I wanted to highlight is the household composition. It's a very important factor to explain the labor problems when more than 50% of household members have people who are under 18 years old and they're still in school. And 68% of the study households, like 17 out of the 25, they have someone away on seasonal work in Australia and New Zealand. So what are their perceptions of climate change? And what are the observed impacts on their farms? Firstly, there was a general agreement among the Fastotai farmers that they've observed a considerable shift in the climate, particularly factors such as increasing temperature and changing rainfall patterns. According to the Fastotai farmers, the common comments are related to the long dry spell, particularly in June to October in 2021, and how this long dry spell severely affected their tallow plantations. The ideal conditions for tallow cultivation and growth are warm temperatures and consistent moisture. The longer than normal dry season can be detrimental to tallow plantations. In fact, one of the bigger tallow farmers from Falealili district with 5,000 tallow tubers reported a huge loss in income when 70% of his crop was destroyed as a result of the long dry spell. Like the rest of the group, cultivating a mixed variety of root crops and fruit trees and vegetables is considered best practice now. Now this slide presents some examples of comments from the focus group participants related to excessive heat and dry spells. So you can have a look at some of the statements I've taken out from our focus group session. Another observed and felt impact of climate change is related to the increased risk of crops to pests and diseases. For example, the pythium roots and corm rots affecting the tallow crop, plus also a combination of poor soil sanitation, prolonged dry seasons, followed by excessive rainfall, particularly in the last 10 years, and soil leaching exacerbate this disease with the tallow root crop. So, what is the farmer's response to this climate change? Well, basically, the response to the impacts of climate change as identified by the households depends on the individual farmer's ability to absorb and recover the cost to crops and animals. By the same token, the household's ability to cope is best described as very basic and practical. Cover cropping is widely used by many smallholders to protect and enrich the soils. planting of leguminous plants such as the Ngakai Samoa for shade and to promote the process of biological nitrogen fixation and to improve soil quality is now a common practice among the farmers in Fastotai. Apparently, planting cover crops was a practice in the past with the older farmers, but the younger generation of farmers are only relearning some of the methods used in the past to control weeds, regulate soil erosion, and promote soil fertility. With new pests and diseases observed or unintentionally introduced over the years, for example, the new variant of the tallow blight, with very minimum farmer knowledge of possible solutions to mitigate damage to crops, the best practice is to revert to some of the traditional methods, such as planting cover crops as carried out by their forefathers, introducing cover crops, new kinds of cover crops, such as the makuna, is grown on land that have yet to be cultivated to prevent overgrowth of weeds and invasive species. There's also practice encouraging farmers, I think, and this is a very practical and cheap response to address the impact of climate change on productivity, as well as to address food security, is to cultivate a variety of crops alongside the tallow and bananas to protect farms from crop loss should tallow and other major staples fail. So I think that is a very climate smart practice. It was also part of the Chinese program introducing these all sorts of varieties of vegetables and fruits to Samoa. So a wide selection of vegetables and fruit trees like apiu, soursop, and lychee under the Chinese agricultural aid to Samoa has expanded the range of vegetables and fruits cultivated in Samoa. So I believe the diversification in the varieties of fruits, vegetables, and root crops, as advocated by the Samoa Farmers Association and of course the Chinese aid projects, is a feasible way, relatively cheap way to improve productivity, income, food security, and nutrition for at least for the households that we looked at, the 25 households that were part of this study. So I think that's all I can share with you at the moment.
Much.
So, and thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I mean, as a lecturer who often now has to deal with things online, I know it's so difficult to present when you're staring at yourself. So thank you for keeping the enthusiasm going throughout. We enjoyed your presentation. Thank you so much. I've now just realized.
Can you just acknowledge that some of your colleagues are going to list the idea?
Okay, so some of your colleagues are here. Can you see us at all? Come and wave. Where's the camera? There's the camera. Stand up and turn around. So Susan, some of your colleagues are here. And you did. It's so hard to present to yourself in a room. Well done. Thank you.
Oh, and our Dean says hi. Louise says hi to Anita and Joanna.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm also super excited because I just realized that we finished at 3:15, not 3, which means we still have 10 minutes. So if anybody's online, you're welcome to put your questions online, and we'll pick them up. Otherwise, and can I ask Elise and John to come join us down here? Susan will keep you on the screen, just so you know you're on the screen still. You know, we've all heard of those Zoom blunders. We've all seen them on YouTube. So we've got about 10 minutes. You can just sit there if you want. Are there any questions for any of our presenters from the floor or from online? Yes, go for it. Oh, shoot, I was supposed to do this. Hold on. Oh, okay, we're just going to wait quickly for the microphone to go there. Does she know? She's still online. But yeah, so basically we've had a great session of learning about 4 new things that are happening. Okay, first question. Susan, you're still online. Just sit down. Just sit and smile until I tell you to move. Okay,
So, kia ora, Phil here from Caritas. I love I'm quite a techie person. I love some of this technical. I don't understand all the science behind it, to be honest. I was more a physics person than biology, and chemistry. But yeah, but at least particularly that stuff around the food waste thing. Just endlessly fascinated by that. I have a retriever. I have 2 retrievers, so I have 2 food waste bins at home. So no food waste leaves my house because golden retrievers eat everything that I don't manage to get through. That does lead me though to my comment or a question really around the resources that the council is also, I'm assuming here, putting into education around lack of waste, because what I see is an amazing technical solution to a problem that shouldn't exist if people were careful in their purchasing and household dietary habits. And the second question is, I noticed composting was quite low down. Was there a hierarchy of the 5 aspects that you were listing, or was it just, were they not in order priority? If they were in priority, you wonder why composting was quite low down.
So first priority obviously is to prevent, right? To not have any food waste to start off with. The next one is that if you do have waste, our project is for rolling out for residential households. But a lot of the food waste that is going to go to that plant is going to come from commercial waste as well. So that's all the food waste that doesn't even get to supermarkets, or it's in, say, commercial businesses and then it gets thrown out. So to answer the first question, you want to prevent and then you want to redistribute. So say you have a cafe and you have food left over at the end of the day, you want that to go to other people in the community. The other thing is that we have feed for animals too. So there's companies, one of the companies that is part of the big company building this plant, what they do is they take pre-consumer food waste, so everything that doesn't make it to a supermarket, because we have, food, health and safety laws in New Zealand. They separate out the packaging and then they give that food waste to animals. So the composting is if everyone home composted, you're still going to have food scraps. Even if you don't waste food, you have banana peels, you have bones, you're always going to have residual waste from your cooking. That's great if you can home compost. A lot of people don't have the space for it, or they work and study too much and can't keep a worm farm alive. I'm sorry, I should admit to that, but we're always unfortunately going to have this residual, but ideally we wouldn't be in this place. But one of the biggest things about this facility is that Auckland Council is going to be one of this parties sending food scraps there, but there's going to be commercial waste. We have the waste from all of our industry partners. So for instance, like milk processing, all of that kind of stuff is going to go there too. And then there's the food scraps from other councils that, because it's centrally located in the North Island, that can also send their food scraps there. Does that answer that question?
Very much, yeah.
You can come and talk to me. I could talk about this for years. Sorry.
Any other okay, there's one and then down here. Go that way as you're on your way down.
Thank you. A question on the Tonga septics. Simply that, knowing that coconut husks have many uses, not least in gardens, have you considered what's the relative availability is, or what competition there might be for those?
I'll just come and answer here by the mic for the online people.
Yes, there are an abundance, but a reducing abundance due to the price of copra, for example. There's not as much introduced. We were talking to our one of our Tongan contacts about that the other day, and she's saying that, what happens domestically, but there are industry, and there are a lot of coconuts, for example. We've been tearing our I didn't have any air to tear out, but we've been trying to find, whether there were any us imported into New Zealand, for example, but it wouldn't make any sense for there to be. But there's a lot of coconuts imported and from Tonga. So they are the us, and they are used as a fuel, the dry coconut husk, and there are other, but I think my gut feeling is there are also some more artifact type uses of husks, and but my feeling that will be very small on the scale of it. But we're going to find out because about the availability but before that question, the question of the life of the husks, we need to answer the first question on the list. What's the life of the husk? So, what's going to be the demand for a household? How many husks? If we've got 150 litres is the ballpark figure, so how many husks per year?
Can they be composted after they come out?
Nicola?
You'll have to speak with the microphone, but potentially we'd have to look at what can actually happen to them afterwards.
Yeah.
And it depends on what state they are at the end of life.
Yeah. They're going to be very wet.
So the answer was yes, potentially they can be decomposed. Okay, we've got thank you so much. We've got a question in the middle here. Who's your question for? Okay, Elise, you back up. No pressure.
So first of all, I found your presentation very, very interesting because we actually worked on a capstone project on food waste. We had to come up with a processing route to actually get rid of food waste instead of, sending it to the landfills.
Yeah.
And as part of the process, we had to go through different types of methods, which one would use. And we were separated into two different groups, and somehow both groups ended up choosing another process as opposed to anaerobic digestion. So my question is, why are you guys going for anaerobic digestion instead of the others?
Cool. So yeah, there are kind of multiple different ways that you can process organic material. I guess the best technology or process, it depends on the context, right? So an anaerobic digestion plant like that's a lot of capital. Like that's a lot of money. That's not viable for kind of smaller communities that don't have enough waste or the capital to invest in that kind of technology. The reason that anaerobic digestion is used for food waste is that you can get composting is more traditionally used, but when you compost food waste, you have to mix green waste with it. So you have to have about a 1-to-1 ratio of green waste mixed with food waste to make a good compost. It's your carbon-nitrogen ratio. So if you wanted to compost all that food waste, you would have to have the same amount of green waste, which takes a lot of space. So that's kind of one reason for wanting for that kind of volume to use anaerobic digestion. The other thing is that as the market for renewable energy grows, you can actually get the renewable energy as well as you get the nutrients from the digestate. So if you have a market for both of those products, then an anaerobic digestion plant is viable. So I guess the biggest thing really is that it's not one or the other. They're complementary solutions. This is not to say don't compost, please do. There's other people that use worm farms. It just depends on the context, and there's been a lot of thought gone into which was the best solution for urban residential Auckland for this process. So does that answer your question? Thank you.
What did you guys choose in your groups?
So both groups, we both end up choosing pyrolysis.
Okay. Don't speak to me about that. I'm in fielding.
I've got one more question if I can
Go
sneak
for
it
it.
in
You
for Elise.
stole the microphone.
Yeah, I did. My question is, so around the behaviour change, I love the way you put out the mummy and baby bin, but in my street, that's not how it happens. Everything gets collected on a different day with 3 or 4 different services servicing my one small street, and I'm always thinking of all the waste that is going on and the picking up of the waste, and could we just make everyone use the same provider on the same day?
Ideally we would have everything kind of just, you'd have a bin that would pick all 3 up at the same time, right? I guess there's a lot of thought that goes into actually the logistics behind this stuff. It's a bit of a nightmare. What we're wanting to do in future is that by rolling out the food scrap service, you hopefully won't have to have a refuse bin every single week. You can have it fortnightly. So that's another reason to use your food scraps bin. Yeah, it's really challenging. And we're trying to develop different ways to get the public to know which bins to put out and that kind of thing. Because I get like, there is so many pressing things in everyone's day every day. Not everyone's thinking, hey, I'm going to go home and put my food scraps bin out.
Yeah. Listen, it's 3:15, so I'm going to have to end the session now. However, if you want to stay, you can. Some of us can stay and still have the conversations going. But people are again, and I know people have to go and load presentations in the other rooms. Susan, thank you so much for zooming in. It was great to have you and to have you with us. I hope it's nice and sunny where you are. It's cold and rainy where we are. It's a big surprise. Thank you to everybody. If you're going to stay, can you just stay seated if you want to continue the conversations? Otherwise, it is tea now. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope this session you're leaving with feeling a little bit more happy and excited about the good things that are happening in the world. Bye, Susan. Sorry.
You decide?
Sorry? What you mean, just something a microphone's got to do on. And so we inoculate, actually what we did was we inoculated. So you've got to have a biofilm. So if